It looks like the future of farming. Towering shelves filled with glowing green vegetables. Robots quietly moving between rows. No dirt. No tractors. It almost feels like someone replaced agriculture with software. But that's almost completely wrong, because the most valuable thing inside a vertical farm isn't the lettuce. It's control. And that changes the economics completely.
So why would anyone spend 150 million on a farm?
Most people assume farming is about growing as much food as possible. But if that were true, vertical farming would make very little sense. Imagine you're standing inside a warehouse worth 150 million. Every square meter has lights, cooling systems, sensors, pumps, backup generators, climate controls. Every hour that building isn't producing crops, it's quietly burning money. That's the first hidden layer. Traditional farms own land. Vertical farms own expensive infrastructure. And infrastructure hates sitting idle. Which raises another question. If these buildings cost so much to operate, why build them at all? The answer isn't yield. It's certainty.
If it isn't about yield, what are they really selling?
Think about a supermarket chain with hundreds of stores. A storm destroys crops in one region. A drought hits another. Transportation delays shipments. Suddenly, shelves are empty. Customers don't care why. They simply buy somewhere else. Now imagine another supplier. Its crops grow indoors. The weather never changes. There are no insects. No hailstorms. No unexpected heat waves. Every Tuesday, exactly the same amount of lettuce arrives. Not almost the same. Exactly the same. To a retailer, that predictability has enormous value. They're not just buying vegetables. They're buying fewer surprises.
How do you grow a plant with no sun?
But creating certainty creates another problem. Nature provides sunlight for free. Vertical farms have to manufacture it. Picture one tiny lettuce plant. Outside, the sun delivers energy every single day without sending anyone a bill. Inside a warehouse, every photon comes from electricity. Those purple LED lights don't just illuminate the plants. They're converting electricity directly into food, which means every spike in electricity prices immediately changes the economics of lunch. That's why energy isn't just another operating expense. It's the farm's invisible raw material. And here's the strange part. The better the farm becomes at growing plants, the more electricity it often consumes. Why? Because faster growth usually means longer lighting hours, more precise climate control, higher air circulation, more automation. Every improvement has an energy price tag attached to it.
So where does the money actually come from?
So, where does the profit actually come from? Not from producing the cheapest lettuce. That's a battle they've already lost. Open field farms can produce enormous volumes at a fraction of the cost. Trying to beat them on price is like trying to beat cargo ships with bicycles. Instead, vertical farms quietly change the game. Imagine two heads of lettuce. One traveled 2,000 kilometers. The other traveled 20. The first spent days inside refrigerated trucks. The second was harvested yesterday morning. One might lose freshness before reaching the shelf. The other lasts longer in your refrigerator. That extra shelf life has value. Not because consumers love longer lasting lettuce, but because supermarkets throw away less inventory. Food waste is expensive. Every bag that gets discarded was already purchased, transported, refrigerated, stocked, and never sold. Reducing waste is often worth more than lowering production costs. But here's what most people miss. The biggest customer isn't always the person buying vegetables. Sometimes it's the grocery chain trying to reduce uncertainty. That changes everything.
Why would a farm need thousands of sensors?
Now think about the building itself. A traditional farm expands by buying more land. A vertical farm expands by stacking more layers. Sounds brilliant? Until you realize every additional layer needs more lighting, more cooling, more plumbing, more monitoring. And suddenly, every extra square meter becomes exponentially more complicated. The farm stops behaving like agriculture. It starts behaving like a data center. Thousands of sensors constantly monitor temperature, humidity, carbon dioxide, water chemistry, light intensity, airflow. Every minute, software adjusts tiny variables humans can't even notice. Why? Because tiny changes become enormous across millions of plants. Suppose humidity drifts just a little too high. One disease spreads. Thousands of plants become unsellable. One sensor failed. Millions of dollars disappear. This is where farming becomes risk management. The crops are simply the output. The real business is preventing small problems from becoming catastrophic ones.
How do you run a farm with software instead of hands?
Which creates another fascinating contradiction. People think automation exists to replace workers. Inside a vertical farm, automation exists because humans aren't precise enough. A person can water plants. Software can water every single plant differently. One tray gets slightly more nutrients, another receives less. A third gets a different lighting schedule because it's one day younger. Scale changes everything. And once software controls the environment, another opportunity appears. Data. Imagine growing one variety of basil. After thousands of harvests, the system begins noticing tiny patterns. This lighting schedule produces slightly larger leaves. That nutrient mix improves flavor. This harvest timing extends shelf life by 2 days. Over time, the company isn't just growing crops. It's collecting biological intelligence. That information becomes increasingly valuable because competitors can't simply buy it. They have to spend years discovering it themselves. But biology introduces a frustrating limit. Software companies can double users overnight. Factories can add another production line. Cloud providers can deploy more servers. Plants don't care. A lettuce still needs weeks to mature. No amount of venture capital convinces biology to hurry. That's one of the industry's hardest constraints. Growth isn't limited by demand. It's limited by time itself, which explains why many vertical farms eventually stop chasing volume. Instead, they chase value. Microgreens, premium herbs, medicinal plants, specialty ingredients, crops where freshness matters more than price. Because if your production costs are already high, competing in premium markets makes far more sense than fighting commodity agriculture. It's a completely different business model.
So, what is a vertical farm, really?
And perhaps that's the biggest misunderstanding of all. People compare vertical farms to traditional farms. But maybe they shouldn't. A vertical farm has more in common with semiconductor manufacturing than with rural agriculture. Both rely on controlled environments. Both require massive upfront investment. Both obsess over contamination. Both depend on automation. And both survive only by producing incredibly consistent outputs. The vegetables simply hide that reality. So when you see shelves of glowing greens inside an urban warehouse, you're not really looking at the future of farming. You're looking at a factory whose raw material is electricity, whose product is certainty, and whose greatest challenge isn't growing plants. It's making unpredictability disappear. Because in the end, the business was never really about lettuce. It was about turning one of humanity's oldest industries into something investors, retailers, and cities value even more than food itself. Predictability.